All right.
Everybody, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board, where we bring experts in franchising and talk about topics that you guys need to know more about to be successful. And I've got Luke Schulte with me today, he's the executive director of franchise development over at Handyman Connection. Great brand, been around for quite a while, very well established, and very respectable. Luke, I want you, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about you and your background, how you franchising. Also tell us about Handyman Connection, and then we're going to talk about our topic today, which is how do you convert or take a brand that might be seemingly boring or old and really infuse new life into it, make it an exciting concept that people can identify with today. But before we get to that, tell us more about you. Tell us about Handyman Connection.
Sure. So my name's, like you said, Luke Schulte. I'm from St. Louis, so Midwestern kid that tried to leave but always got sucked back to the Midwest. I've been in franchising for the better part of 15 years now. Always been involved with home service brands. The home service brands have really become my passion for a lot of reasons that we'll get into. Like you probably see in the background, have a pretty wild background here. I have a degree in painting, which means that I'm only qualified to do what I'm doing right now, which is talk, because there was no career path in painting. But no, it's something I get passionate about. I love the idea of business ownership. I come from kind of an entrepreneurial family. I got second fathers that have always owned businesses. So, having that passion of exploring brands, and introducing new brands that people would probably think were crazy. That's one of the things that really drives me here.
That's fantastic. Well, so Luke, a couple of interesting tidbits that people should know about you is he's a dad. He is an artist. Stuff you see on the wall behind him is stuff he's created. So very, very cool stuff. And he makes guitars. So two of the guitars in this room, I won't tell you which ones behind him, are ones he has made by himself. So anyway, Luke's a pretty talented and fun guy. You're going to enjoy this conversation with him today, guys. And before we do, so the topic today, guys, we're going to talk about how do you take a concept that might be seemingly maybe mundane or boring or not sexy. I mean, handyman work is maybe not sexy. Painting is not sexy. Neither is roofing, right? The only sexy franchise I'm aware of is pool cleaning, right? Because some people find that relatively enticing, but I'm just kidding. It's not. So let's. But how do we take a concept like that and kind of transform it so it becomes a little more appealing? It's a little more sexy. I mean, it's still not going to be sexy, but how do you make it more appealing to a business owner, somebody who wants to invest in a franchise? Before we do that, though, tell us just a little bit about Handyman Connection, Luke, just to give people kind of an idea of the history, so that when we talk about the journey you guys went through to kind of modernize the franchise opportunity, they can get an idea of where you started and then where you ended.
Sure. I mean, Handyman Connection was rooted in the simplicity of the business that we have. Some of these great franchise concepts that are out there, let's find something that is a need that needs to be satisfied, and let's just do the thing that no one wants to do. And frankly, that's where we came from. A lot of our experiences came from people that worked at first service brands, which was the sort of seed that sprouted into a lot of different businesses, but focusing on, being that connection between the customer and the person that's doing the work. That's what you see with a lot of the first service brands that we have. Jeff Wall, who is our CEO and our owner, he started there with College Pro Painters, grew a great business as a franchisee first, and then worked his way into the corporation side of first service and College Pro Painters, and then kind of built this out. So he was working for first service brands. This was a brand that came into their inventory. Jeff became very passionate about what they were doing, saw the opportunity with Handyman Connection. And we're this great brand that, we've got over 65 locations in between the United States and Canada. Lots of opportunities that are out there. But a lot of the franchisees that are here started with our original model. And now we've got a bunch of people that are getting excited about the things that are new with our brand as well.
That's great. Yeah, Jeff's sharp. Nobody could say otherwise. I bet it's fun to work alongside him. Tell. So let's talk about the idea, right? So the service concept wasn't super sexy, right? This one, it's a really good business investment. There's a reason why home service franchises have exploded, and why as the economic downturn happens, they'll probably continue to explode. People are just seeing the numbers, and it's hard to argue with the item 19 information, right? They just tend to perform well. But what did you identify? So let's talk about, when did you start to see like the market wasn't responding to the concept the way you thought? What sparked this idea of how do we rejuvenate this concept?
So one, we looked at who is our customer. So we knew that our customer, for example, not to boil it down too much, but our customer is typically college educated, married or engaged female between the ages of 27 to 65. Dave, it's not you or I. Typically, it's my wife, for example. And one of the things that has happened with that buyer is that buyer is a very informed consumer. You know, Amazon happened. You know, Uber happened. And so these ways of transacting and doing business became something that is now the norm. So in the past, when we would talk about a handyman business, somebody'd say, "Oh, I got a guy." And they wouldn't know what the guy's name is. He'd be logged into your phone somewhere as Handyman or Joe or whoever it would be. And this was just a dude with a pickup truck and a toolbox.
Right.
That was how the handyman industry was for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Amazon happens, Uber happens, and now this customer is used to transacting and doing business in a way where it's an on-demand customer, but they're very informed. They know how to research what they're looking for. And the other thing that happened, and this was the beauty of Uber, for all its pluses and minuses, what it did is it created a platform that was safe and that established trust. And what I mean by that is, again, think about the demographic group of who we typically cater to. This is a consumer that loves the fact that when they hired Uber, they got to see a picture of the driver. They got to see the type of car that was coming. They got to see the reviews and the ratings of the past clientele that came through. This was what they were looking for. And so for us, the same thing's there. We had to figure out, how do we cater to that customer and meet them where they are, but we also had to figure out how to establish trust, because this was something that, you know, there was some immediacy with the work that needed to be done, but if someone trusted you, you would pay them more money to do the work that they were willing to do. But just because it wasn't some random guy that smelled like cigarettes and whiskey from the night before that showed up in a rusty truck, you know, this was something that was a premium, especially for the people that were hiring us.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, like, we know that not every handyman out there has a whiskey bottle filled pickup truck. Yeah,
but that's the fear.
Yeah, no, it is. It's funny because people, they tend to think the worst about that industry, and all that I think you're doing is vocalizing probably some of the fear, especially with your ideal client being a female, right? Having some dude show up at the house while you're there, maybe by yourself, like that can be a little scary. So I think what you're doing, because you guys isolated who your real buyer was, then you started really building a strategy around how do we accommodate the needs of that buyer. I feel like, one, this is just strategic brilliance. It's the way everyone should be planning. But two, that you guys made a couple of pivots that led to helping you address their needs in a unique way that helped you be much more competitive. So maybe, share with me a little bit more about that. So how did you guys incorporate something into your business model that helped accommodate that?
So, well, it was by listening to what the customer needs. You know, that was the first piece of it. But we then had to go out, and this is, again, the benefit of having a brand that already has a number of customers or a number of franchisees that are out there. But we used that buying power to go out there and to find the systems and the technologies that would meet the customer where they are. So with our business, just like an Uber ride, you book an appointment with us and the customer gets a text notification that sends them to a link that they will then show all that other stuff. One of the things that we did realize is that our customer doesn't want to download an app for a handyman service. They may download an app for an Uber, but we needed to make it as easy as possible. So we have a platform, we have an app that both our owners and our craftsmen use to schedule out their day, to write their estimates, to collect payments, to do all this. The beauty of this device is
Yeah.
that's all that a craftsman needs
Mhm.
in order to do their job. We don't need laptops, we don't need computers, we don't need any of that. It can all be done through this.
That's great.
So that was sort of the catalyst to get us to look at those technologies. The other thing is we also listened to not only our customers, but we listened to our franchisees.
Mhm.
And we looked at where were the pains, where were the struggles that they were going through. And so we took the technology maybe to one step further. So now we're looking at how do we write estimates via the app virtually so that before we even get to the house,
Mhm.
now the customer knows, hey, this is probably what it'll cost. You've already had an interaction just like we're having, via FaceTime, via Zoom, via a platform that's similar to that. So now they've got estimates. Now they've got an idea of what the cost is going to be. And so when our guys show up, they're showing up to do the work. So
Mhm.
again, speed to lead. Let's get a truck in that driveway and let's
Yeah.
offer to do the services same day. That came as like I said, a combination of listening to both the customer and our franchisees. And really what that's blossomed into is this business opportunity that doesn't necessarily need an owner to be there, 40 plus hours a week.
Yeah.
We have the systems, we have the technologies, we have the structures. As long as that owner has a smart device and a cell phone connection or an internet connection, you can see what's happening in your business at any given point in time. So that was sort of the next phase of the modernization. One, let's embrace technology. And two, let's make this a business that is scalable, that can be replicated from one territory to the next, maybe by having one person that wants to build an empire rather than necessarily having a franchisee that just wants to build a nice little nest egg for them.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about that for a minute because I think there are a lot of people that are attracted to the home service industry, and there are a lot of people because of the cost and the P&Ls, the AUVs look good, the item 19 information looks good. Like, hey, I could not just replace but enhance my income after 12 to 18 months by owning this business. And
Right.
yet, a lot of people, I know personally, when I look at that, I've been in technology and software for a long time. I've started several businesses, e-commerce, tutoring companies. When I was in college, I started a tutoring company. But like sometimes I look at business concepts, I'm like, well, that's just not sexy. Like I'm not super, and I don't want to go over and like hang a TV for somebody or like fix a broken pipe under a sink. So but that's not what your owners are doing, right? So maybe paint a picture like what should if they're following the plan, and let's be clear about that. A lot of people they fall in love with the business model, and the first thing they do after writing a check to you guys to use your business model is they try to change it all. So an ideal owner who actually follows the plan, what does their day actually look like running a Handyman Connection franchise?
Great question. So look at our name. We're Handyman Connection. And that really defines what is the role of the owner. They're the handyman's connection between the customer, the craftsman. They're the one that's coordinating the relationship. So the way I'll sort of simmer this down to the most basic term, the Handyman Connection franchisee is the business liaison between the craftsman and the customer.
Mm-hmm.
They're watching P&Ls, they're watching the marketing spend, they're looking at the demographic group of who's doing what. They're also the coach. They're looking at what are the efficiencies of the people that they're working with. Most of the time, the craftsmen that we're utilizing or the handymen that we're using, they're already people that know the industry. They've already got their own business. They've got their own tools. They've got their own truck. What they're very good at is they're very good at being a handyman.
Mm-hmm.
They're maybe not so great at being a business person. So what we're trying to promote is we're trying to promote a balanced relationship. So the customer gets a fair product or a great product at a fair price.
Yeah.
The craftsmen are making more money than they're used to making in two folds. They're making more money because they're more efficient. They're not wasting their time driving around chasing customers all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting more work done in a day, And then the other beautiful thing is because our franchisees are keeping their eye on that marketing spend and are being very efficient with the marketing activities that they're doing.
Yeah.
Now they are at a place to where the customer is a better customer than what maybe the craftsman or the handyman were used to getting before.
Mhm.
So watching those things, very specifically, our franchisees are not swinging a hammer. They are not turning a wrench. If I ever hear of our franchisees swinging a hammer or turning a wrench, they're going to get a call from me, or I may just get on a plane and shake them a bit, saying that is not what we do. The second thing they should not be doing, they should not be writing estimates. A lot of times people will say this handyman business sounds great, but I'm the guy you hire. I'm the guy that hires you guys. I'm not the guy that does the work. That actually is going to work in your favor. Let the handyman, let the craftsman write their own estimates, because they're going to know better what the job is. Again, this is a relationship to where you're fostering it and you're coaching them on efficiencies, so they see the value that you bring to the table. So they're more than willing to give up that portion of the ticket to the franchisee.
I love it. Well, and that's where I feel like you guys have taken something that feels like a pretty mundane industry, and you've turned it into something that's all of a sudden, if I'm a franchise owner, I'm not looking at buying a handyman business. I'm looking at buying a technology business that happens to broker handyman services, right? It's
Exactly.
really kind of flipped the model on its head just a little bit. And what does that do to you guys now as you're looking to add franchises to the system? How is making the shift and making it, the model now a little bit less mundane and more tech and business strategy enabled? What has that done to the type of people that you find are attracted to and succeeding in the business?
So we're looking for those corporate refugees. We're looking for the people that are looking to branch out on their own. Somebody that's looking to take control of their destiny as opposed to making money for somebody else. So we love that. The other thing that I will tell you is, when we talk about, who's a good franchisee for us, or what is that common characteristic that runs through, finding somebody that can empathize with the customer, I think, is the most important part. Someone that knows, why would you hire a Handyman Connection as opposed to just doing it yourself. That's going to be a critical piece, because if you can't get into the place of where your customer is, then you're going to struggle. And frankly, that's why handymen struggle, is because in their mind, and I'll apologize to him later, but I always kind of throw my father-in-law under the bus. My father-in-law is an engineer, great career. When he retired, he started doing handyman work and different things like that. If you would tell my father-in-law to go hang a ceiling fan, it's going to cost $125. He would think you were absolutely insane. He's like, you just go down to the basement, you throw that breaker switch, it's 2 wire nuts in the ground, and you just bolt the thing up. Why would anybody pay that money? Well, that's the problem, because the people that are hiring us, they're baby boomers, they're too old, they're whatever we are, the letter people generation in the middle, or it's the millennials, and the people in the middle are too busy. The millennials have never done anything like that before if it doesn't involve a computer. So we have this target customer base, and all we're trying to do is we need to get in that space to where they don't want to go out. They don't know how to do the things that we're doing. They're more than willing to pay for it because they have the means. And to the handymen, they think that it's insane that somebody would spend that type of money. So in their mind, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just in and out of there in 30 minutes. I don't see how anybody's charging more than 40 or 50 bucks for that. The customers are willing to pay for it, especially if we give them the experience. We establish the trust with them. We come in and out, and it's not going to take 2-3 weeks for us to come out. We come out in a couple of days from when that initial request was made. So that's where that mental block comes. And for us, if we have a franchisee that understands where the customer's coming from more than where the handymen are coming from, that's going to lead to a profitable business.
No, I love what you're describing there, because there are certain people that won't succeed with the model, right? Like, for example, if you've worked at the DMV for 30 years and you have no empathy for other humans, that's probably not the move, right? You're not going to succeed in this business model. There are other things you should do. Learn how to trade crypto or
Yeah.
something that doesn't involve humans. And I'm kidding. There are great people at the DMV somewhere. I just haven't.
Where?
Yeah, someone's going to listen to this and like find me and be like, Dave, I'm
We'll
working
get
at
trolled.
DMV for years. Yeah. Anyway, but I love that you guys have, again, you've isolated a specific type of a person, more of a psychographic than a demographic, right? The difference being, as a demographics, like, okay, socioeconomic, dollars and cents, where do you live, what type of background have you got? But psychographic is, what's your personality type? Like, what makes you tick? And those things are really important as you're trying to figure out what type of an owner you should be recruiting for the business. So let's talk a little bit about this model that you guys have created, and adding this technology and making it now a lot more enabled, so an owner can truly operate the business. They work on the business a lot more than they work in the business, which I see as a really big strength to what you guys have built, Luke. What is it? What kind of opportunities does that open up for? Let's say the territory right next to me is sold, or let's say I know there's a great market over in Memphis and no one's got it, and I really would like to build my business there. Like, what type of options is that? And I live in Salt Lake area, like Utah area, so that's obviously geographically not sound. What type of opportunities does this open for somebody who wants to own maybe a couple of territories, or wants to run a business remotely, or just wants to be a semi-absentee owner? How does all this investment you guys have made in infrastructure and technology and things, how does that change the nature of the business?
Well, I think what it's going to do is it's going to lower the burden to entry. We want you to have an office. It's not a fancy office. We want you to have 500-600 square feet. And that's just more a place to where you can operate the business where it's not at your breakfast table. You don't want your craftsmen showing up to your breakfast table to interview and all that other stuff. So you have that sort of separation of home and work. That's the only burden to launching and to starting a business. Obviously, there's marketing costs and a few things like that. But when we talk about scaling and we talk about growing, now we're utilizing, whether it's our recruiting technologies or it's using the day-to-day operation, the technology that we use for day-to-day operations. But now we can run 2-3 territories out of one singular space. As long as we have marketing dollars being spent in a zip code, and as long as we have craftsmen that either are near that zip code or in that zip code, we can service customers in those areas. So before, a typical franchise would say, well, you need to have an office in the middle of your territory, and then if you wanted to expand to a second or a third turf, if they were adjacent, you needed to have an office in each one of those. We don't need that. The other thing that we don't need is, again, with this sort of Uberized world that we live in here, we don't need you to spend a lot of money on trucks. The craftsmen have their own tools. They have their own trucks. We can do this as a W-2 model or a 1099 model, depending upon where you live. So there's scalability, there's adaptability in every one of the markets that we have. The other thing that has come of this is, again, that semi-absentee owner. That's a new thing for us in the past couple of years. And we've seen that through the model that we have with our franchisees. Our franchisees have hired managers. Our franchisees have hired sales associates. So as their businesses grow and expand, this is something that has been the reality of scaling within a singular office. And I think the one thing that people miss out on is the scale of the opportunity. To be frank with you, I got a franchisee. I got 2 franchisees in Ann Arbor. I got one in Ann Arbor. I got one in Eden Prairie, which is just outside of Minneapolis. Those aren't areas that are like, hey, let's go work outside all year. They got real winners there. But those businesses, those guys, they may have 25 or 30 craftsmen working for them at any given point in time.
Wow.
So the scale and the size of what you can do in one territory is something that everybody misses out on. The opportunity to embrace technology and run this maybe while you're keeping your existing job. maybe you're not ready to jump in with both feet. Some people enjoy insurance and a steady paycheck. But there's that's a new opportunity for us. Even with some of our other franchisees, we've got franchisees in our system. Now, they had existing businesses first, but they went from having one territory in Cincinnati, for example, and now they got a territory in Colorado. And they're running all of that through that one central location. So the opportunities are there to grow and to scale. How many times do you hear of somebody in franchising that says, "Oh, well, I live in, Wisconsin, but I like to spend my, the winter months in Florida." Okay, maybe there's an opportunity once you've built your business here. Let's get a second location, being run in that place you like to winter. So we can grow, we can evolve with the franchisee. And I always laugh about this, but the word pivot and franchising don't necessarily go hand in hand. These are proven, tried and true models. But once you do find a franchise like Handyman Connection that is willing to pivot, that's willing to adjust, watch out. There's some exciting things that are going to come from brands like that.
Yeah, well, I love it, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, excuse me, Luke, and kind of bring you into the advisory board podcast was because there are a lot of franchises out there that are building concepts or have concepts. I mean, we work with concepts that are they're 45-year-old franchise systems, and the idea. I also, poor guy, I was working with a guy. And he didn't have sales automation, no CRM. He had almost no tech. And he'd been franchising for 2 years. And he's like, "Dave, I haven't sold a single franchise yet." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you here. This is why." Because to be fair, like there are other handyman service franchise concepts out there. There are many painting franchises out there, which this guy just happened to be one. And you better, if you've got a buyer that's worth anything, that's going to be, if you want somebody who's going to be a legitimate franchise owner, they're going to be reviewing 3 to 5 different franchise concepts that are in the same bucket, right? The same general category. Maybe a couple of home service franchises, maybe a couple of painting, maybe a couple of window, whatever, right? They're going to be looking in that category of 3 to 5 different franchises, especially if they're working with a broker. Brokers are smart. They're going to say, "Hey, these are the 3 to 5 you should be looking at. Let's introduce you to all of them and figure out which one's going to be a match." Like, you just have to kind of assume that as the franchisor. But this guy, he was completely blind to the concept that he was probably the only painting franchise I'd ever met that had zero technology. And the buyers, unless he's selling his franchise to like a 75-year-old man who's afraid of computers, no one's going to want to buy it because they'll look at the other concepts and be like, "Yo, these guys are all using client tether over here. These guys are using that. Like, they've got great tools, and I don't have to spend 7 hours a day moving data around between systems to try to make the business run." No. Yeah. So the savvy buyers, especially now we've got a lot of like the millennials, and Gen Yers, Gen Xers, they're buyers. They're all tech savvy, and if they leave their corporate job where they use technology all day and walk into a concept like this that is tech deprived, they're going to run away screaming. And so, but the opposite's true too. If you show them, "Hey, this is how easy it is to operate the business because of our technology," they're going to feel very comfortable with that idea. So I think what you guys have done is brilliant. And this transformation process you've gone through is a good model for other franchises to take a look at.
Well, and I think that's the other thing too, and that's sort of the struggle that embrace those technologies, look at what's out there. Another thing that I'll say, and I know this from experience, sometimes the widget that looks expensive that you're looking to fix with a technology piece, look at it hard, because sometimes developing those widgets are very expensive. If you try and develop it on your own, look at the other industry providers that are out there. Look at the systems and tools that already exist, and look at it from the perspective of, I don't necessarily need something that's proprietary to me, but I just need something that works for me, that I can put my spin on. And that's what we love. We talk about this. We've got a technology committee that is made up of franchisees. And we're always looking to see, what do we want our system to do next? And can the person and the provider that we have now do that? Because if they don't, then, there are other ways to do things, and there are plenty of smart people in the technology fields that are willing to do things for businesses. And I just love the fact that between our executive team and also the franchisees that are a part of that, they're not resting. The technology works today, but they're always looking, what can make it better next week.
Oh yeah. Well, and I want to ask you a little bit about that if you don't mind, Luke. So, everybody who's been running a franchise for a while understands they need to have a FAC, right? They need to have a franchise advisory committee. But it sounds like, did you guys create a specific committee that just talks about technology that operates in parallel to the FAC, or is that how do you guys do it?
Yeah, we've got an overarching advisory committee that we use. Then below that, there's kind of subcommittees. There's a marketing subcommittee. There's a technology subcommittee. There's one that works with staffing and recruitment. I think what happens, and this is something that I always challenge franchisors about. You've got a bunch of wonderful people that were very successful in business, frankly, that had the means to pay your franchise fee,
Right.
and to make the investment into your business, that come from a very different backgrounds. You had somebody that was a marketing executive. You had somebody that was in software. You had somebody that was an HR manager. You have all these different people that have a different set of skill sets and experiences than what the franchisor has.
Mm-hmm.
You need to embrace them. That's the only way that these franchises are going to grow. And frankly, to go even one step further, forget the organized committees. As franchisees, you need to be speaking with each other, whether it's having a peer group or a flight group, or, having a mentor sort of relationship. These are all people that come from varied experiences. And I love seeing how one idea on California catches fire and helps a franchisee on the East Coast. You need to use the people that are in your organization. And this isn't being run from up on high. This is something that we need to embrace, the people that have bought into the concept as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I coined this or if I mean, it certainly isn't something I made up, because I've heard it used elsewhere, but I see constantly conflict. Yep. Where the franchise system's like, no, us, our way. But then I see groups like what you're describing. The ones that I see that thrive, they've got an open two-way communication process, and they figured out how to harness the collective genius of their franchise owners, which is insane to me that many people fight so hard against it. The corporate staff is like, no, these guys don't know what they're doing. They're not following the program. And sometimes I think, yeah, but is the program right? Like, right. Yeah, that was made 45 years ago. Like, is it possible that in this new era of the interweb, maybe we should be changing our strategies a little bit? I find it insane, because you're right. These people, these franchise owners, if they have enough capital and net worth and things so that they could buy a business and successfully run it, perhaps, just perhaps, we could spend a little more time listening to them and harvest their insights, because they're going to come at this with fresh eyes every time we hire a new person. I always am really curious, and I tell them up front, I need you to ask why about everything, and I want you to question every process that we've got, because if you do, you'll see things honestly that we probably ought to improve, and we just haven't thought about it because it's been that way for a while. So I really find there's a lot of value, but you got to be a little more careful in franchising. You can't just change everything randomly. Like, you have FDDs in place and operations manuals, but there are a lot of things you do have leeway to make adjustments on, and you ought to be looking for ways to improve them. I think what you're describing is super, super smart, Luke, and more people should embrace that.
I always say there's the system, and then there's best practice. Mm-hmm. The system should be simple. The system should be direct. Best practice is one of those places where we can massage a business based off of territory and owner. So run with it, have fun with it. Make it your own. Mm-hmm. This is something that this is your business. Mm-hmm. But there is a model. There's a roadmap. But what you drive is maybe a little different.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, let's part with this. So a couple of closing remarks from you. Let's say you were, are you going to go to IFA, by the way, in a couple of weeks?
I am missing out on this one. I'm too busy. I would love to go. I've been the last couple of years, but I'm sharing the fun with some other members on our team, so I'm skipping this one.
Oh, okay, too bad. I was going to invite you to join us at our event, but if so, let's say you were at an industry event, you're sitting across the table for someone at dinner, and you find that they've got a pretty old business model. Like, what would you recommend to them? Like our first steps, like how should they start the process of evaluating how they could start to maybe modernize their processes and make their business operate more in a tech-enabled fashion, so it can be a semi-absentee owner operated type business?
I would think it's pretty simple, and this is how I run a conference for myself. This is the way I address a conference. I want to go find the people that I want to strive to be, and I want to ask them a bunch of questions. Buy them a beer, buy them a sandwich. Buy yourself 5-10 minutes with somebody that is doing what you would like. And I think the benefit of franchising is this isn't an industry, a collective, whatever we are. This is not a place where people like to keep secrets. I think there's plenty of opportunities for all of us. So I think most people are going to be pleasantly surprised with how much information someone will share with you about what works for them. So ask questions, go to the events, go to the conferences, go to the networking opportunities. And this is one of those things that we all grow, we all learn. And if you're giving information, chances are, you're going to find something out too when you get involved in that conversation.
Yeah, that's great advice. I that's one thing. I've been working in the industry now for a little over 4 years, but I found it a little surprising how collaborative the industry was. Like if I would see two people that would seemingly be competitors sitting across the table from each other, complaining about the challenges that they're sharing in the industry and talking about ideas that could make each other better. That's not normal. Like you don't see that in other industries, but this is one where, I mean, heck, it's why I started doing this. I just had so many good pieces of information. I was like, I got to share this. And everyone's like, I'll share my best practice. You just shared with us. Like, how have you guys evolved your business? So one of your competitors could listen, but you're not worried about that because it's a pretty big blue ocean out there. And I find that that's a pretty common sentiment in this industry. People are willing to share. And I really appreciate you doing that.
I always loved whenever I would go to the meetings, the other people that were in my space, when I was with the maid business, all the people that were in the maid businesses, we would all talk and we wanted to figure out what everybody else was doing, not from a competitive perspective, but, how can we grow the industry, because all ships, rise with the tide.
Yeah. And everybody's got the same problem in that space, as in most service industries. How do we get people? How do I keep people, right? Like same challenges across the board.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Luke, this has been great. Again, guys, thanks for tuning in. Luke just shared some great insights with us about how can you adjust a model? How can you transform what you're doing as a franchise system so that you can maybe modernize it, make it a little more appealing to a buyer, but also make it so you're enabling multi-unit owners, semi-absentee owners, really attracting the type of franchise operators that can help you really succeed and grow your franchise system. So, Luke, thanks so much for being a guest today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.